Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about communications, specifically devices you can use on the trail, whether you're off-roading or overlanding, or even just in your day-to-day life to improve your communications with those in your group, those around you, and hopefully not, but maybe in an emergency situation. So when I was in the Army, we had an acronym. Everything in the military is an acronym, but this one was PACE, and that stood for Primary, Alternate, Contingency, and Emergency. And we use that for a lot of things, especially communications. So today we're gonna go through those four things and how I implement them. Now keep in mind, this is just what I do. I'd love to hear in the comments down below what stuff you figured out that may be different than mine. So first, we're going to start with primary, and as you probably guessed, it's a cell phone. Now, I'm recording with my cell phone right now, so I can't show you it, but if you made it to YouTube somehow and don't know what a cell phone looks like, yeah, put that in the comments too. I'd love to have a conversation with you. But anyway, a cell phone for me is primary because of how easy it is to use. You can communicate with anybody in the country or even really the globe. You can get some apps that help you to communicate with someone on the other side of the world. You just got to have internet connection, and you can do that. So texting back and forth with my wife, my family, anything like that is super easy. A phone call is super easy to use. There's tons of apps related to overlanding. Some of those include things like Onyx. I actually started using Onyx for hunting long before I got into off-roading, and it was just a natural transition over to Onyx off-road. So they both work pretty well for my situation. I know there's other apps that other people really enjoy. In addition to Onyx and the other mapping style things like that, I like using an app called iOverlander. There's other ones called Seeker, S-E-K-R, and I believe there's one called like HipCamp or something, and it just is a way for you to find campsites. Super easy. You can find them on Onyx, especially if you go to an area a lot. I like every time I go somewhere, whether I'm spending the night or not, if I see a campsite, I'll mark it. So then when I go back to that area, I have options for campsites. These other ones are the same thing, but it's open to everybody else, as far as I know. I think Seeker you have to pay for. I'm not sure about HipCamp. I've just seen them talked about quite a bit. But I primarily use iOverlander for that kind of stuff. Other applications that I like using, the Compass app on an iPhone is actually super helpful, especially when you're trying to find your GPS coordinates. When I get to a campsite, I always send my coordinates to somebody, and I usually just snap a picture and say, this is where I'm camping tonight. So they don't necessarily think of it as like a, oh my gosh, he might die kind of thing, but at least they know if they don't hear from me, they've got a spot to start looking for me. I also have different apps for devices I use. So I have the WeBoost app that's helpful for finding where a cell phone tower may be if you're trying to position your antenna. I like using the EcoFlow app because it gives me control over my power station. It allows me to control all of the components of it, such as turning the inverter on and off. I'm able to see the power draw, and if I'm charging, I'm able to see the power in, and just keep an eye on that, especially if it's, you know, in the bed of the truck and I want to look at it up here, or if I'm at home, I can quick check it to see if I need to charge it or anything like that. Things to keep in mind though is make sure you have a charger. If your cell phone is your only means of communication, probably not a good idea to be using it to take a bunch of pictures and videos and things like that without a charger especially. But even if that's your main thing, I like to have whatever I'm relying on for communications separate from what I'm using for pleasure. So if I'm, you know, taking videos or pictures, it's nice to have a dedicated camera for that. So Joe, what happens when I'm out in the middle of nowhere and I don't have any cell phone service? Well, that's where a signal booster comes in. I picked up this WeBoost on Facebook Marketplace. If you remember, I used to have that little shark fin up there. It helped a little bit, but I've noticed much better results with this. I've actually got it tucked under the seat, kind of hidden, so I'm not gonna show it. But I've got this on a CB antenna mount, so I can kind of spin it over and fold it down out of the way, and then I just clip it in here. It's got this spring here, which is really nice for when you're on the trail. If you hit tree branches and stuff, you don't have to worry about this breaking. But especially at highway speeds, it starts flopping around a lot, so I usually keep it down like this. Helps a little bit, but definitely if you're somewhere that you need better service, get that up in the air. And it helps. It's not going to boost it from, if you don't have any service, it's not going to boost it. God bless America. But back to that. If you don't have cell phone service, it's not going to boost zero to anything. But if you've got a little bit, it helps some. I kind of go back and forth on it, but it looks cool, and that's what we're doing here, right? So now we're moving on to alternative or alternate, whatever you want to say. For me, that's a GMRS radio. You already know I'm using B-Tech radios. I think they are a great mix of value and quality. I really like the fact it just sounds good. You got everything you need here, nothing you don't. You also have a lot of controls here. You can control up and down which channel you're on, easily cycle between the 4 here like that. You can control a lot of the menu and programming things off of there. And overall, I'm just happy with it. And right there, stuck on the side of the stop box with a magnet. In addition to that 50-watt mobile that I've got, I carry 2 of these. These are the GMRS 2-way radio. I'll link these down below. They did send these to me, but that's the extent of it. I'm going to give you my honest opinion on it, and I've been pretty happy. I like using these, especially if I've got a spotter on a trail, trying to get into a campsite. Just the other weekend, I was out with some buddies. He didn't have a radio, so I handed him one of these, and we were able to communicate back and forth. I think we were probably a few hundred yards away at most, but it was pretty nice to just be able to have communication. There was no cell phone service, and so we were using these exclusively. For those of you who don't know, B-Tech is not the cheap Chinese Bofang that we've all seen on Amazon. This is a company that programs these radios. They're based in South Dakota. It's all done. It sounds like a small company. They've got a really cool bio on their website, so check them out. But these, for me, have a great mix of value, and I like supporting a U.S. company too. So I've looked at other ones. The cool thing with GMRS, you can get any radio you want to. You know, with these B-Techs, I can talk to anybody using, you know, say a Midland or a Kenwood or whatever else radio you're looking at. You can communicate with these as long as they're all set up and, you know, on the same channel and all that. So if you're curious more about these type of radios, I'm working on a video. There is a ton of stuff to try to synthesize down. There's some other YouTubers out there. Not a Rubicon, I believe is his name. He's got some really good stuff on GMRS, but the pros of GMRS is it's a more powerful radio, and it's more powerful than a cheap Walmart radio. If you just go to the store and buy, you know, like a little walkie-talkie, that's great if you're just talking to somebody right outside your vehicle. But if you're trying to have communications down the road a little bit, not going to work as well as a GMRS radio like this. And now it's time for me to jump on my soapbox. If you didn't know, GMRS Channel 20 is a designated national emergency calling frequency, which means if you have an emergency, that's the one you're supposed to talk on. I've heard a lot of different things, 16, 19, whatever. Channel 20 is the one that's been designated by, I believe, the FCC or whoever came up with that. It may be a different group. And that is what you're supposed to use in an emergency. You can still talk on it. There's nothing saying you can't. And that's what I talk on all the time. And then if somebody has an emergency, we're already on that. They know there's people there and you can talk. Now, granted, you're not going to be able to get as far as, say, you know, like ham radios. There's a lot more repeaters. It's a much bigger network. And so you have a much greater chance of connecting with somebody. But I use this in the woods anytime I'm out there, and hopefully somebody, if they have a problem, will be able to get a hold of us. I don't know if I'd use this in a life or death. Definitely don't count on this, but you know, if you're stuck or you broke down or something, that might be a time you don't want to hit that SOS button on a Zoleo, but you've got this. You can try to get a hold of somebody in the absence of cell phone service. That doesn't mean you can't use any other channels. I've heard a lot of people say 16 is the one they use because 4 times 4, you know, 4x4 turns into 16. Sure, whatever you want to use, you can use any of them as long as it's in. There's certain channels you can't use near the Canadian border. I think they use, you know, there's something over there, different country, different frequencies, kind of makes sense. But these GMRS radios make it so much easier than trying to do hand signals and yelling and all that, especially when you're trying to spot somebody. I like it way better. Or, you know, every couple hundred yards, looking in your mirror, making sure whoever's supposed to be behind you is back there. If you're in a group, you're trying to count 1, 2, 3. It's just easier if you have communications, and it makes it a lot more fun. You can talk and whatever. Hey, look up here, there's a deer or an eagle or whatever. And then everybody can look off to the left and see the animals and the wildlife and what we're actually out there for. That's why I like it. So far, we've gone through my primary, which is a cell phone, my alternate, which is a GMRS radio. And I use those two pretty frequently, especially just in everyday usage. So now we're going to get into contingency. And I think this depends on a lot about what you're doing, where you are, and who you need to communicate with. For me and my wife, we've got 2 kids, and a lot of the trips we're going on this summer, we're going to leave them with our parents. And so we want to have a way to be able to communicate with them and them to communicate with us in case there's an issue, you know, a kid gets sick or something like that. So I've got a Zoleo device. They also sent this to me for me to use and everything, which is awesome. I'm paying for the service. So the way this works is you get the device and then you pay for a monthly service. Depending on what levels you want to use, there's different levels that you can pay for. I'm cheap and I'm just paying for the base thing, which I get 25 satellite-based text messages a month. Using this device, it connects to my phone. You go on the app and you're able to send and receive text messages right on there. It goes through here, bounces the satellite, goes through its satellite magic, and goes to where it needs to go. That is really nice, especially so I can communicate with my family. They can, hey, so-and-so is sick, and we can make a plan based off of that. There's also this little check mark. You click that and it sends out a pre-recorded message that basically says, I'm okay, and here's my coordinates. You can send unlimited of those, and it just goes to one person. So the way I've got it set up is this is going to get, when I hit that, it'll send it to my dad. He can see where we're camping and all that, and then send it on to the rest of the family members that need to know. It's a great way to stay in touch with people while also getting away from everything in life. As I'm sure you can kind of tell, I don't have a lot in the contingency section, and I was thinking about that. So if you've got some other ideas for that for me, let me know in the comments down below. That's definitely something of this plan I need to shore up a little bit. Luckily, I haven't gotten to that point, but other things the contingency could be is a second cell phone in case the battery on your primary cell phone goes dead, or you fall and break it or something like that. So my wife and I each have iPhones. We each carry them. We're going to make sure they stay charged. So that could be part of the contingency also, is just having backups of things that you might use. You know, I guess you could say I've got the 2 GMRS radios. If the battery dies on one, it falls off my waistband into a waterfall or something like that. You never know. Crazy things happen. So having backups of things also is an important part of that contingency plan. And now the part that I hope no one ever gets to, but we need to be prepared for it, is the emergency part of the PACE plan. So as I was hinting at earlier, the Zoleo also has that SOS button. So it's got this little flap you lift up, and underneath you have that SOS button. You hit it. I'm not going to do it now because I don't need 911 and everybody showing up at my house, but you hit that button, hold it down, and if you have your phone, then you can go to the app and you'll be able to text back and forth. They are part of the Iridium network, which is the biggest network of these kinds of things. Basically, they have this, and they have a dispatch center that's monitored 24/7. So when you hit this button, it sends a signal with your location to them, and then they're able to talk to you. If you have your phone available, they're able to talk to you over text message like that. You can describe the emergency and anything you're going to need them to know so they can get the right responders out to you. If you don't have that, it just sends I'm assuming a pre-recorded, I'm having an emergency type thing with GPS coordinates, and they're probably just going to send everybody and their brother out to try to help you. So super nice to know that you have this. It does need a clear view of the sky, so it's not going to work, you know, in a tunnel or something like that. But anywhere we're out overlanding, off-roading, camping, biking, anything like that, this is going to be out there. Just make sure you point it straight up at the sky, get out of your vehicle if you can, and that will get help coming to you. One thing to think about though, this is going to take time. From the time that you hit this button, it makes it to the satellite, comes back down to their dispatch center. They start figuring out what's going on. They figure out where you are. Then they have to figure out which county or jurisdiction you're in. They have to contact the local responders, probably the local 911 dispatch center. Then they have to figure out which fire department, which police department, EMS department, whatever, or who's running search and rescue in that area. They have to get those people notified. Well, if you're in a remote area, chances are it's not going to be a full-time fire or EMS department, probably volunteer. So those people are going to get notified, woken up, whatever, get dressed, go to the fire station, get the gear, which they do that all the time, so they're pretty good at doing that. But this all takes time. So if this is a true emergency, it's probably best to hit this button sooner rather than later to get that ball rolling. And if you get out, you get whatever issue figured out, you can always cancel it. You just hold the button down for 5 seconds and it sends a I'm okay or a cancel message or something like that. And also I'm assuming you can be texting back and forth with them. So definitely a good thing to have. I hope I never have to use the SOS feature on it though. There is an SOS feature that comes with OnStar. That was kind of the main thing it started with. It has crash notifications. So if you crash your vehicle above a certain speed, it'll automatically send a thing. They will, I believe, try to talk to you in the vehicle. And if they don't get any response, then they just assume something terrible's happened and they start dispatching everybody. This SOS button right there, I have actually used once. I was driving during a winter storm and there was a car accident. I didn't think it was safe for me to stop. So I reached up, hit that SOS button. And I chose to do that instead of just calling 911 because I kind of wanted to see what happened with it. And it was very similar to if you called 911. They answered the phone. I think it rang once or twice. They answered, said, OnStar dispatch, we show that you are at this location. It was right where I was. They said, is that where the emergency is? I said, yes. They said, okay, what's going on? I described that there was a car accident. They asked some details, you know, was everybody out of the car? I couldn't tell if anybody was hurt or not because I was still driving past. And so they took down all that information. They took down a phone number for me and they notified the local responders. I didn't go back and check to see if the right people got there, but I assume they did. So that is a good option. You don't have your cell phone, you're whatever. You can reach up, hit that button and get help coming. So now let's recap. Primary, I've got a cell phone. You all know what a cell phone looks like. There's lots of apps that you can use, plus the things that come pre-installed on a phone. You know, the phone application, text messaging apps, whether that's the native one, you know, Messenger or whatever the Android phones use, or something like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, DMs on Instagram, something like that. You can communicate with just about anybody you need to on there. There's other Overland specific apps, Onyx Off-Road, there's iOverlander, the Compass app if you want to get your GPS coordinates, the Zoleo app, different things like that. My alternative, GMRS radios, I've got this and the mobile. The mobile's more powerful, bigger antenna, able to talk a lot further, so that's why I have that. These are great to just hand out the window to somebody to go be a spotter, or, you know, backing up a trailer down a narrow driveway, something like that. I use these all the time. That's why they stay in here. Contingency, we talked about having backup devices, multiple devices in case your cell phone battery dies, you know, a way to charge it, or if you drop it, you break it. That's why I've got 2 radios in here. My wife and I both carry a cell phone. We also talked about messengers such as this that are able to communicate far outside of cell phone range. I'm pretty excited about this though. I'm gonna do a dedicated video once I use this a few more times, at least the messaging features on here. I think that'll be pretty good. And then we talked about emergency and different things such as SOS here, SOS on OnStar. If you have a ham radio, there's different things like that. There's GMRS channel 20 that you can use in a, maybe not life or death emergency, but your vehicle broke down or something like that, to communicate with the people you need to get a hold of. Let me know in the comments what I missed, what you're using, and what other things I should be on the lookout for. Thanks for watching.